celebration and remembrance of St. Alban, the first martyr of Britain. Here's the short story. Alban sheltered a priest who was hiding from persecution and ultimately died by taking on that priest's identity when the authorities came to arrest him. In thinking about Alban, I've been thinking quite a bit about safe houses, specifically those folks who take great risks in their own lives to make sure that others can live in safety. Those who guided escaping slaves through the many stops on the Underground Railroad, helping them to find their way and offering food and housing for the night. Or the courageous people who sheltered Jewish families during the Holocaust, making sure they were kept hidden. The owners of these safe houses risked their own lives to create places of kindness and protection. And we do not need to look further than our own backyards to find examples of keeping others safe. Here in Portland, our expo center is filled with asylum seekers. Since their arrival, there's been an outpouring of resources and prayers and volunteers from all corners of the area in response to welcoming the stranger in our midst. A stranger that becomes a new Mainer, as you say, who becomes a neighbor. As a community, we're keeping them safe by meeting their daily needs for food and clothing and shelter as they seek a life far away from prosecution and violence. Their stories and the way we've responded are truly remarkable. When I'm not in Maine, or when I'm not in New York, I live in an old house in Delaware. There are 2 ancient pine trees that are planted in the front that flank the front door. The builder of my house, a man named Moses Montgomery, was a well-known patriot who served in the Delaware National Guard from Revolutionary times through the War of 1812. Legend tells us that those two trees were a sign of welcome to fellow patriots. A traveler, upon seeing those trees, could knock on the door and be welcome for food or a good night's rest. I don't know if it was their Christian faith that guided Moses and his wife Margaret to risk their own safety for others, or their commitment to the cause of freedom. I also don't know if they actually ever welcomed somebody into our house. I do wonder, though, if I would have. Would I have been strong enough in my faith to welcome a stranger into my home for their own protection? Loving enough or kind enough to risk my own life for someone else? We're very accustomed to Jesus being portrayed as loving and kind. The champion of the oppressed, the weak, and the persecuted. He protects the other in first century Palestine. He feeds the multitude, he heals the sick. Even touching the hem of his clothes can relieve years of pain and suffering. He casts out demons and raises folks from the dead. He changes water into wine, calms storms by simple commands, and he's the ultimate fish finder for his apostles. Their nets are full to breaking after a long and unfruitful night. Best of all, Jesus teaches us about love, repeating the great commandment of our Jewish ancestors. You remember it. It's the one that goes, "You shall love your Lord, your God, with all your heart and all your soul and all your might." And then Jesus adds the second great commandment, saying, the second is this, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." That's awesome. Love the Lord, love my neighbor, love myself. As Tim said last week, love, love, love. Yeah. We like that kind of loving Jesus, don't we? And sure, he's snarky, outwits them, silences them, puts them in their place. And yet, my friends, here we are in this very comfortable place, cheering him on from the bleachers and behaving like the gospel is some kind of spectator sport. Until he turns to speak to us. And then it gets personal, really fast. On this feast day of St. Albans, we hear Jesus say, "I have not come to bring peace to the world, but a sword. A sword that will cause divisions, setting loved ones against one another, causing conflicts within families, within communities, within nations." Ouch! The letter from John tells us when we go out to do this work, we shouldn't be surprised if people hate us. The Gospel of Matthew tells us we don't need to look far to find danger. Our foes will be members of our own households. There is danger from within our own families. There's this tension, right? On the one hand, we like it when the gospel tells us to be loving, accepting, and forgiving of one another. And yet today, Jesus gives us examples about how this love causes division. Holding those two concepts together is challenging. But make no mistake, Jesus is warning us that staying true to our faith can be dangerous. It was certainly dangerous for Alban. So let's take a look at the story of our patron saint. Alban was a soldier in the Roman army, stationed about 20 miles northeast of London. He gave shelter to a Christian priest who was fleeing from persecution and was converted to Christianity through this priest and that relationship with him. When the officers came to Alban's house looking for the fugitive, Alban dressed himself up in priest's clothing and gave himself up in his place. Later, the authorities saw through the deception, but they decided to persecute Alban anyway. The Venerable Bede, in writing the history of the time, gave this account of Alban's trial. When Alban was brought in, the judge happened to be standing before the altar, offering sacrifices to demons. "What is your family and race?" demanded the judge. "How does my family concern you?" replied Alban. "If you wish to know the truth about my religion, know that I am a Christian, and I am willing to do a Christian's duty." "I demand to know your name," insisted the judge. "Tell me at once." "My parents named me Alban," he replied, "and I worship and adore the living and true God who created all things." Alban was beheaded on the hilltop where the Cathedral of St. Albans now stands. Jesus was hung on a cross, dying for the radical welcome of others, for speaking the truth about the kingdom of God, which was threatening to those who were in power. Jesus says in our scriptures today, "Whoever does not take up my cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." Jesus demands that we love him and follow him beyond our comfort zone, beyond the love of parents, beyond the love of our children. Listen to that again. It doesn't say not to love our families. It says to love Jesus more. It is not our love for those who are close to us that's the problem. It's our priority. The gospel then continues with "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." Jesus assures us that his message of love is absolutely the right path for our lives. However, that message of love wasn't to lie down like a doormat and be trampled upon. It means to love in such a way that we fight for those who are being persecuted. We speak for those who have no voice. We take the message of redemption and resurrection to the parts of the neighborhood where we would rather not go. We radically welcome one another who may not look or act or believe quite like we do. Our faith is not a spectator sport. Christ taught us to rely on God more than anyone else in our lives, to spread his message of love to the world and proclaim its truth and its light, to love our neighbors as ourselves, and he died for that message, which frankly we've come to expect from the divine. Alban, however, was human, just like you and I. In his case, he harbored a priest within his own home. He died for standing in place of another person who was being persecuted, and for believing in and proclaiming the risen Lord. My friends, we look to the martyrs and the saints of the church for education and for inspiration, bearing witness to their testimony and the ways they lived and the ways they died for their faith, which may make us take a good hard look at how we live our own lives. How can we fully participate in our faith and not just from the sidelines? Or perhaps the lesson of Alban goes beyond this and asks, what would I be willing to risk for my faith? What would you? Amen.
Amen.